Cern Basher has joined us yet again, and we're going to do part one today, and there will be no part two, which, I don't know why I bring that up, but maybe I'll just make it up, Cern. I'll just take some of your slides and make a part two, out of thin air type thing,
Just play the show in reverse.
That's an idea. Yeah.
See how that goes. I might be more intelligible if you play what I say in reverse.
Yes. Oh, you wanted me to actually play it, not just do the slideshow in reverse, but actually do the English or whatever you want to call it, the sound in reverse.
Yes.
Well, there might be some hidden stuff. Did you do that? Are you close enough in age to me to where you would play the recordings backwards because there was hidden information in your music?
No, I never did that, but I'm aware that certain crazy people did that. Yeah.
Well, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So before we get into the slides, what are you thinking about? We've got a huge amount of news overnight, yesterday and overnight with regard to Tesla, the date of the launch, the fact that they're driving around in some unsupervised cars right now in Austin, that the California has a license to charge people for rides. So much stuff going on right now. What say you about the potential at this point for something crazy to happen to the stock market soon, so that Randy's right, because I like being right.
If you can get interest rates to come down suddenly, that would help your cause. Yeah.
I'm working on that. I'm working on
You
that.
are. I know you are.
This morning I did a very long piece this morning talking about the fact David Rosenberg talking about the fact that the amount of extra policy, uh, uh, what would you call it? There's a name for it. I forgot the name, but anyway, it's basically an insurance policy that the bond folks want right now for the long bonds is the highest it's like been in 30 years or whatever, and he expects this to reverse. He is not one of the ones who believes that we're in a bond crisis and that people are going to stop buying the bonds, and that he thinks it can't last. So.
Well, he's a smart guy. Let's hope he's right.
It would help. It
Yeah,
would help.
it would definitely help just the overall stock market in general. Sure, not just Tesla.
Yep. So are you going to drive over to Austin and get a ride?
It's still unclear about when it's going to be sort of publicly available.
Sounds like end of the month.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if that's the case, they better have a lot more than 10 or 20 vehicles.
Yeah. They're going to need, I think so. Yes.
There's going to be a bit of a surge of demand.
Yes, I think so.
So we haven't made any plans yet, but we would like to go and check it out.
All right, cool. All right, excellent. All right.
Yeah.
So what do you got for us?
Well, let's start with a few things. This is kind of I thought kind of a cool image from Penny 2X. Everything is computer.
Uh-huh.
So we have artwork here of Elon looking like a computer. This may be NVIDIA's newest chip in a couple of years.
That's right.
Wouldn't that be fun?
That is pretty wild. That's a pretty wild picture. But I've seen some picture with tats that are not far off.
Yeah.
I don't know how those end up in my feed. I must have clicked on one time, and now I'm seeing all these people with things hanging off of them and lips that are 17 times too large and whatnot. So I don't know what I did wrong.
Yeah, you make a mistake on X or any social media, you live with the consequences for a long time to come, as the algorithm thinks that you like certain things.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, here's the usual disclaimer.
Next week, would you put up also a claimer?
I
Because
should.
I think we should have balanced reporting.
That would be a good idea. Yeah. I'll work on that.
Okay.
So a lot of people are excited about this. I'm not really sure it makes a whole lot of difference, but Elon says his time as a special government employee comes to an end. And he does say here the Doe's mission will only strengthen over time as it becomes a way of life throughout the government. Okay, but I've obtained what he really wanted to post.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah, I'm ready.
here's what he really wanted to post. So we've got the federal government on the treadmill working off
Um,
the extra pounds, and Elon's saying, "Keep going, you're doing okay," as he's looking at X. And then after the workout, the rest of the government comes in with their spending bills saying, "Let's celebrate."
Yes, well, Senator Johnson would certainly appreciate this piece of humor. I was encouraged, I will say, Cern, I was encouraged not to take away from the joke, but I was encouraged that it looks like the rescission bills are being prepared and sent to Congress. So maybe we've got a chance of reducing this bloated mess.
Let's hope that they can find some cuts somewhere because this cartoon shows that both parties are kind of aligned in spending as much
Yeah,
as possible, but in reality, both parties should be aligned in trying to trim the fat on the government. That's really where the focus should be.
yeah,
Yeah.
we can agree.
All right. Good. We don't have to agree to disagree. We can just agree to agree. All right. So this is also part of the whole bill process. Elon says there's no change to tax incentives for oil and gas, just EV and solar. So this is a disappointing thing because, oil and gas industry gets a ton of money. I don't know what the quantity is, but I think it's, obviously in the billions. And this seems unnecessary at this point to be throwing money at that industry, but that's the way it is right now.
Yeah, so of course, I think like Elon, I think it would be better if all industries were able to, operate on their
Yeah.
own value that they're providing to their customers. That is, of course, the pure capitalistic approach. One thing I do know is apparently, I've been reporting this at least for months, and especially over the last weekend, is that energy is wealth. And so, and Elon says we're going to run out of electricity by next summer. And there's apparently some kind of an issue with having enough energy to run our data centers and also keep up with China. So all of those things, at least I'm glad to see that the federal government has a huge focus on getting us to build the necessary energy supply that we do need. And my biggest hope, maybe you would agree with this also, is just get the regulators out of the way. I think business will figure it out. If there's money to be made, they'll go after it.
Yeah, I would disagree with you or take issue with you a little bit on what you said there in terms of, do these fossil fuel credits and subsidies and all that stuff encourage building, capacity for energy production? I'm not sure it has,
Mhm.
right? I would rather see the government spend their money in encouraging, enhanced energy production,
Generally.
preferably not oil and gas, preferably in sustainable,
Right, right.
resources. Um, But you're right. We do need a lot of energy. We need a lot more of it. And again, if we're going down that path, the a lot more energy, it's best if it's sustainable,
Right. 100%.
right? In the short term, more oil and gas, fine. I'm okay with that, but not in the long term.
Right.
That's the wrong path.
Well, and I don't think I don't think even the people who are the most pro fossil fuels are doubting at this point that the future is nukes
Yeah.
and solar. Yeah, I think it's pretty much agreed that that's where we're going.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not sure about nuclear energy, but definitely solar. Um, and then Tesla Energy here getting into the mix, and Elon reposted this. Abruptly ending the energy tax credits would threaten America's energy independence and the reliability of our grid. And we urge the Senate to enact legislation with sensible wind down of 25D and 48E. This will ensure continued speedy deployment of over 60 gigawatts capacity per year to support AI and domestic manufacturing growth, which are, near and dear to Trump's heart.
Right.
So in case people don't know what 25D is, that gives homeowners a 30% tax credit for solar installations. And 48E offers businesses a 30% credit for clean energy projects. So the concern is if you just cut that, then suddenly, a lot of good things that were in the works disappear, or you're putting some hardship perhaps on some people. Um, anyway, we'll see how that gets straightened out. Hopefully, something's done there for those folks.
Yeah, I think he might win this round. I said this on my program this morning. I think that Elon might win this round. The Republicans might feel that they owe him at least something to listen to
Yeah,
on something that's in his field of play.
yeah. No, that would make sense. And again, I'm not so sure how much this really helps Tesla.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, somewhat obviously with the battery storage, but yeah. All right. More exciting things. RoboTaxi in June, and as far as I know, Randy, June's like just a couple days away.
That's what I've been told. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the calendar could be revised any minute, but as far as I know, that's set in stone. Now it looks like it's not going to be June 1st,
Yep.
but mid-June-ish. So that's good. And then Elon said this. He said, for the past several days, Tesla has been testing self-driving Model Y cars, no one in the driver's seat, on Austin public streets with no incidents, a month ahead of schedule. Um, so again, if today is May 29th, is that a month ahead of schedule if it's the end of May and they're starting in June? But anyway, that's fine. He's not so good with dates, I think. This is Elon's one weakness. He should have said 2 weeks ahead of schedule. That would have
Yeah,
been
yeah,
funny.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, and then he added at the bottom, he said next month, first self-delivery from factory to customer. So it'd be funny when Joe Techmeyer is filming the car coming out of Giga, Texas, and he has to chase it down the highway to the buyer. That would be fun.
Yeah, when he first mentioned this idea, or somebody mentioned the idea a few weeks ago, we talked, I don't know if you and I talked about it, but it's like, I'm assuming that most of these factory to customer deliveries will be near the factory. I don't think they're going to be driving them from Austin up to Iowa. But we'll have to see how that all works out.
That's right. Yeah, no, I would imagine it would be in Austin or in the Fremont area. Yep. Um, this is these are my projections, Randy, for the RoboTaxi ramp.
I saw this on X the other day. I was very impressed with this. I thought it was quite clever,
Yeah, and it was very clever and upsetting to some people. I didn't put any information on the x-axis or y-axis.
which made it more
I,
fun.
yeah, I got some grief though from people on that. But the message here is that it will be an exponential ramp. It's just a question of which curve.
Yes, yes.
Somebody actually took this and drew a curve further to the left of the green one and made it vertical and said, "I prefer this."
Well, you have a vertical. It's just the one axis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter, does it? This is one of the things we've talked about before. I mean, if we hit 1 million cars on the road by August or by next August, a year from, or by September or by the following January or February, it's not really radically very important. Yeah.
But you know what I just realized is that we're still going to be counting cars,
Yeah.
N not cars that we're selling to customers, but cars that are being deployed. We're still in the car counting business,
You
Randy.
will still be in the car counting business. So, Cern, I'm going to throw you an idea for next week. I've been throwing this out a few times that the RoboTaxi rollout will be the number one most the fastest profit growing. How would you say it? It's gonna have the fastest amount of profit. Let's say it this way. I think that they'll get to 40 billion in profit on a run rate by the end of next year, and that amount getting to 40 billion in that short of period of time will be the shortest period of time to get to that level of any product or service in history by a lot. I have not yet looked up to see what might have been the fastest previously. I have not yet tried to figure out if that 40 billion number is a good one. But it seemed to me $40,000 per car in profit was in the ballpark about what everybody's talking about. In 1 million cars, that'd be 40 billion. So anyway, that is if that stimulates anything between now and next Thursday, that'd be fun.
Yeah, thank you for the homework. Yeah, it would probably be hard pressed to come up with too many other industries that have grown that quickly. Certainly with what NVIDIA has been through over the last couple of years, that's been a pretty astounding growth and profit.
Right.
That would be the one that I would put in the leading position. Um, the other one that comes to mind, obviously, is Apple's iPhone business, but I doubt that it grew as
Right.
quickly as what you're talking about.
Right.
Anyway, we can dig into that.
Hmm.
Yep. So speaking of growth, and this is looking at a bigger picture in terms of GDP growth. So Elon was asked the question, how soon can humanoid robots have an actual effect on the GDP of any country? And Elon responded 4 to 5 years. And then he came back and said robot cars, aka FSD, should have a noticeable effect in 1 to 2 years. So that got the wheels in my head turning
Okay.
to try to figure out, well, what's a noticeable effect,
Right. We
right?
we call it a one Swift or a two Swift because remember Taylor Swift had a noticeable impact on GDP last year or the year before.
Oh, okay, yeah. Do you recall what the number was?
I don't. No.
Yeah, sorry, I haven't done this in terms of Swifts. I've stuck with dollars, but if we want to convert to Swifts, we can do that. So let's just go through this little exercise.
Okay.
So this is a US GDP from 1947 to 2024.
Okay.
And this is not on a log scale.
Hmm.
So, GDP is not increasing exponentially. It's just larger numbers.
Right.
But anyway, we're at about a $29 trillion economy at the end of 2024.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. And the GDP has grown at an average of about 6.38%, 6.4% over this time period.
Hmm. Okay.
Now, this is not real GDP growth. This is just
That's
nominal
with inflation. Okay.
without taking impact of inflation out. So you can see there in the 70s, early 80s, GDP growth was faster
Right.
than that blue trend line of the 6.4% trend line. But again, that's inflation pushing that growth up higher.
Right.
So important to keep that in mind. But for this analysis, I just wanted to look at nominal GDP growth.
Sure.
Okay. So here are the annual growth rates, the nominal GDP. Again, the average is 6.4, so it's kind of in between here somewhere. So quite a few years where it's been higher in recent years, quite a few years where it's been lower than that, 6.4%. But we also had a period of time here where inflation was a lot lower
Right.
than the period that was back here where we had high GDP. So again, inflation matters. Um, so before we can make any projections, let's just assume that for the next 5 years, we're going to get 6.4% GDP growth.
Okay.
So where would we be in this time period that Elon's talking about, this 4 to 5 year time period? Okay. So that would mean that our GDP would go from 29 trillion. I may have said billion earlier. I meant to say trillion if I didn't. 29 trillion to almost $40 trillion
Hmm.
of annual GDP for the year 2029.
Okay.
Now, I should also mention here that when Elon says 4 to 5 years, he probably wasn't talking about 2025. He's probably thinking 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30.
Sure. Sure.
So I may be off here by like a year, but it doesn't matter. This analysis still stands no matter what actual calendar years we're talking about. Okay. All right. So here's what that would look like on the trend line. Again, the purple line is basically the blue line. It just follows that 6.4% trend.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That's our baseline. Now let's suppose that RoboTaxi and in the later part of this, humanoid robots start to come in and start to impact GDP.
Okay.
Okay. And so I modeled out growth of kind of accelerating growth. So I've got 6.4% for this year. That's the first purple bar. 7% for next year, 7.5% for 2027, 8.5% for 2028, and 10% for 2029. Okay. Let's say we were able to accelerate GDP along this scenario. Again, I'm just pulling numbers out of a hat to see if it's material and what that might mean. Okay. All right. That would mean then that our economy gets to GDP of 42.6 trillion in 2029. That's a $2.8 trillion extra amount than if we just grew at the same 6.4% baseline growth.
Okay.
Okay, here's that chart here.
Hmm.
By 2029, we're 2.8 trillion ahead of where we would be if we just kept growing at the average rate we've been growing at for many, many decades.
Right.
Okay, and again, no contribution from this year. It all comes, in the next 4 years. Okay, so is this conceivable that Tesla could generate an extra, 2.5 to 3 trillion?
Right.
Okay. So when I look, then here's how it looks. Is that noticeable? Yeah, it's noticeable. It's deviated from the trend.
Right.
Um, but when I look then at my model and I look at the annual RoboTaxi revenue, I have about 500 billion in 2029.
Okay.
Okay. And then when I look at my Optimus revenue, I have about 500 billion in 2029.
Hmm.
Okay. And again, Elon might have been referring to, also 2030, but that's fine.
Right.
All right. So the combination then of these two is about 1.1 trillion. That's about 40% of the $2.8 trillion increase that we just talked about a minute ago.
Hmm.
Okay. So Tesla itself, in the production of the robots and selling the robots and deploying them and starting RoboTaxi and ramping it, right? And we've gone through the assumptions on that in previous shows. We even built a model for you.
Right.
So
Right.
folks
Right.
can go back and look at that and see where these numbers come from. Um, Tesla would account for 1.1 trillion of economic growth just in these two business lines over a 5-year period.
Which revenue, if we just use today's numbers, would be by far the largest revenue of any company, with
Yeah.
Amazon and Walmart now finding it out, I think around 700 billion.
Yeah. All right. So big numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that's the direct impact to GDP. Now, whenever you release a new product into the wild, there's often an indirect impact, right?
100%.
That's probably why people are buying it, right? They're making use of it, right? Like just the production of something, you're increasing GDP, but people are now applying that technology to their lives, and hopefully they're also getting some use and benefit from it. That's
Sure.
further increasing GDP.
Hmm.
So what Tesla is getting, you can call that a direct impact on GDP. Now we also need to look at the multiplier effects and what's the indirect impact to GDP.
Right.
Okay. And so in this case, it's about 60% to get to our $2.8 trillion increase. We would need
That's
another 60% growth or additional over the 40 that Tesla accounts for 1.1 trillion to get to the 2.8 trillion. Now, how reasonable is that? Well, I did a little research and the estimates for Apple's iPhone,
hmm.
okay, from 2007 to 2024, it's estimated that Apple increased US GDP by 1.1 trillion because of the iPhone.
Hmm.
Okay. But was that pales in comparison by the indirect impact of iPhone, which is estimated between $5 and $7 trillion. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the direct percentage was 15% and the indirect growth was 85%.
Wow.
So it doesn't seem like a stretch that if Tesla's accounting for 40% of the GDP growth in this little scenario, that another 60 could come from indirect effects.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
Just using the iPhone as an example.
Right. Right.
And I would even say that probably RoboTaxi and Optimus may even be a bigger compounder than what the iPhone was.
Yeah. It's a little hard to know. Obviously, the iPhone had all the apps, which resulted in a massive number of people that were setting up companies in order to be in the app business, the app store, be a part of that group. I don't know that there'll necessarily be something like that rolls out of either one of these, but we've talked about in-cab advertising as a possibility. There's lots of possibilities. I think I saw a headline yesterday suggesting that Tesla is also going to be doing their first test today of a delivery using the RoboTaxi. So Deliveries are another possibility. So there's certainly other businesses that are likely to grow out of this out of both products. But it's one of those ones that's a little hard. The futurist has their job cut out for them because nobody would have gathered how much came out of iPhone.
Right.
And it's probably way more than we can contemplate at this point.
And the same is going to be true of this. The RoboTaxi is a platform. Optimus is also essentially a platform that you can layer additional products and services over top of. There will no doubt be a lot of indirect benefit to GDP from both of them. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Because transportation and labor are foundational to our economy.
Yeah.
So was communication, right? So all three of those are super important to our economy. So if Apple had that much indirect benefit, I think it's safe to say that Tesla will have, you know, probably on a percentage basis, something very similar.
Yep.
15% direct and then another 85% from indirect benefits. Yep. I think that's something for me that I would be comfortable with in terms of saying, if you ask me to hang my hat on something, I think that's probably pretty safe.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Well, sir, I know we said this wasn't going to be a two-part series, but here I am changing the rules on you right we had to splice this into the middle. I guess that's more than anybody out there needs to know. But Cern, I want to thank you for helping me put together part one. and we'll look forward to seeing you in part two, which will be out probably Saturday morning.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I look forward to part 5, which will be in 2 weeks from now.
Yes, and all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.